Welcome to Time to Press Pause, real life stories from the C-suite. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of The Salient Strategist, and today I'm speaking with Elor Shem Tov, and we discuss the importance of pausing on a regular basis to remain centered and not let your emotions take over your reactions, and how to be sure you don't let other people's opinions change who you know you really are. Elor Shem Tov is founder and CEO of Lucid Lev, helping senior leaders harness internal awareness to drive high performance, strengthen teams, and foster a thriving corporate culture. She is an entrepreneur, executive coach, and corporate leadership expert, specializing in internal empowerment, resilience, and transformational leadership. Previously, Elor served as Chief Administrative Officer of a biotech startup, where she led operations, HR, and finance, successfully scaling the company from seed to Series B funding. She holds a master's in expressive therapies, psychodrama, from Lesley University, where she explored action-based therapy and subconscious transformation, principles that deeply inform her leadership approach. An award-winning storyteller, Elor also created and directed Digital Affairs, a web series exploring human relationships in the digital world. As a speaker and coach, she blends business acumen, psychology, and creativity to help leaders evolve, inspire, and create lasting impact. Welcome, Elor, to this episode of Time to Press Pause.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Well, thank you for coming. You and I connected on LinkedIn, I would say a little bit briefly, but I loved your background and we haven't really had a chance to chat. So I'm very intrigued and eager to hear what your Press Pause story is. So please share.
My story is about a challenge that I did not expect as part as my leadership role. It was a challenge I had to face because it really questioned everything I knew about leadership and empowerment. As the only woman in management, 3 of my colleagues decided to accuse me for creating a toxic environment. It wasn't just an attack on my leadership, it was a strategic move to push me out. Everything was on the line: my reputation, my role, the way employees looked at me, the way the board looked at me. Everything was on the line because it was such a unfortunate accusation. That was the moment I decided to press pause because I was so overwhelmed. The accusations were shocking because it wasn't who I was, and it wasn't even related to anything I believed in leadership or how to create an environment that empowers others and open communication, how we create trust and relationship with each other as colleagues. And I didn't know anything about it until my boss came and he's like, well, we have to launch an investigation because 3 of your colleagues accused you for creating this environment. And I was like, what the hell? I don't know what to do right now. And so I was so overwhelmed, but then I knew that the accusations are incorrect. And I had an option. That's where I paused. I'm like, I need to pause and recalculate, and I need to understand what's going on internally because I can come and defend myself and react from a place of fear of losing my job or fear of ruining my reputation or anger. Why do they do this and why it's happening to me? This is not fair, and react from that place. But I took a break and I paused and I started observing myself. First of all the thoughts that came through my head. What does it mean? Is that correct? What it means about myself, how I feel about this, how I feel about people accusing me. Why am I reacting the way I react? Why I have those fears? Why am I angry? Yeah, it wasn't fair, but it was also not personal because I understood it was a strategic move to pretty much push me, I guess, from my role or from the company. I'm not sure about their intentions. And so I paused and started asking myself really, really tough questions. What do I believe in? Where is my power lays? Because I believe in empowering and empowerment and giving others the opportunity to grow and evolve. And so, what happened that brought me to this point? I had to call a lot of my friends and mentor and have that support system to help me ask those questions and really dig deep into my core values as a person, as the history of my career, and the employees and people I interact with, and observe those moments and see, is it true? Maybe I do create a toxic environment. But then the more I explored and I observed, and everything I did was the most amazing thing, without judgment. I did not judge myself. Like, you did right, you did wrong. Why did you say this? Why did you say that? I started obviously looking back into conversations I had with those colleagues, with employees in general. Am I creating this environment? What is going on? And so all those questions forced me to really, really observe myself and not judge myself for every tiny move I did, and come from a place that I empower myself and I believe in my own truth and how I lead other people, regardless to their accusations, regardless to what they said about me. And I'm not my accusations. That was like the aha moment. I was like, wait, I am not all of what they're saying at all. I'm actually the opposite. And so, though nothing was under my control, because once the investigation launched, you have no control on the situation. It's just what it is. And so the only thing I could control is how I showed up for myself and how I came through and I spoke to my truth and what I believed in. It was challenging, but it also brought me to a place that I was more grounded and centered and knew myself better, because I showed up in a different way, because I didn't take that anger or fear and came from that place. I came from a place that I'm centered. I know who I am, and I can communicate, and I can do this investigation from a place of clarity, from a place that I can communicate correctly what happened, what were the situations that brought to that, maybe thinking of toxic environment or things like that. It really helped me throughout that journey that took 2.5 months of investigation, to really not be resentful, not be afraid to come to work or talk to the other employees. Really, I stayed grounded and centered to do my job, because my job was super important in the company and I had to continue doing my job. Otherwise, things will fall apart, or the performance is also important, especially in those high level management roles. You can't not perform. Eventually, it ended, thankfully, and the accusations were baseless. And so I was relieved a lot, because I'm like, okay, someone heard my voice, and because I stayed true to myself, they saw it. No hard feelings. Actually, journey helped me realize I want to do more. And that's what brought me to what I do today, which I coach others from that place of observation to really make the right decisions and have the clarity to do those decisions without fear. After a few months, almost 6 months later, I decided to quit and just open my own coaching business. And so it's a happy ending for me, at least.
Wow, that's quite a story. And I can only imagine, to what you just said, a huge moment in your career. I want to say I'm sorry,
Don't.
but I feel like I don't need to, with the way you put that story out there, where the process you went through, you don't require that kind of response.
Yeah.
Really interesting. You said a lot of
Thank
really
you.
great things. And now I want to unpack this because that was a fascinating story, a difficult story, or challenging, we'll use your
Yeah.
words. And I, first of all, love the peaceful way you shared it. So
Thank
it
you.
was obviously the pause, that's what you were going through, because you said things like, I observed myself, I observed my thoughts, and oh my goodness, the things we tell ourselves, right? But one thing you said was, I am not my accusations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't put myself in those shoes, but just last week, something was said to me in a way like, well, do you know this? And I was like, well,
Mm.
yeah. Like, I thought to myself, yeah, I've known this like for 10 years. And it stuck with me over the weekend. And I really I struggled going to sleep thinking, why did they think I knew that? It was
Right.
definitely, I'm not what or who they think I am. So that resonated with me. So you
Thank you.
mentioned it was 2 months of investigation.
Investigation. Mm-hmm.
So your pause was about how long? Because you said you went back to work and you had to perform.
Yeah. I think the first week was the main point of me pausing, though I had to continue working. I had to continue communicating with them, communicating with other employees. That was part of the investigation, and knowing subconsciously that I can't express it to anyone. I can't really talk about it until the investigation ends. So the first week was a roller coaster of emotions and pauses throughout the day. I had to put a mask and like, oh, everything is fine. We have business meetings, we have everything as usual. And then when I had moments to myself in my office, I had to pause. I had to kind of understand what's going on. And so sometimes I cried, sometimes I gave myself some pep talk. No, it's going to be fine. Don't worry. Sometimes I was observing my thoughts. And so for the first week, I think I had to go through moments of pretending everything is fine and then go to pauses, moments. And then, like you said, sleepless nights, because again, all those questions and all those thoughts you have in your head, it all has a reflection of your past, from that past moments, from those emotional reactions that we had, and those tiny agreements, I call them, when we created in those moments that no one will talk to me like this, or no one would say those things to me. This is where you react, and this is where all those questions come. Understanding that it is your past. Now it's not necessarily what happens. Now it's something else. Now I'm in my 40s. I'm not in my teenage life. Now I need to communicate in a different way. I cannot react from that place. And all those sleepless nights of thinking, observing, not judging all those thoughts, because then you're questioning yourself when you ask, why am I thinking this? Or why is it bothers me so much? Why do I want them to like me? Why do I want to have a good relationship with them? And all that is in your head 24/7. And you can't just tell them, go away. I don't want to think about this. You dream about it, you think about it. First week was like that. Something was going on with them that probably brought them to a place that they wanted to do this move. And so after a week, I think I even came with a lighter energy to the office, because I believe in myself and I know my worth. So no one can break me. No one can tell me who I am. No one can accuse me of anything, especially if it's not true. So
Right.
why does it bother me? Right?
Right.
It's not the truth. And so yeah, I started,
Especially
right.
if it's not true. Gaining that belief in yourself, that can be a long road. I feel
Mhm.
like you were probably pretty much there, and this was, as you said, a challenge. But
Mhm.
you also said I could defend myself from fear and anger.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you took the better road there, right? Because that would have fed into everything
Hmm.
they were saying. And to your point, that isn't who you are. So knowing who you are, and that comes with a lot of introspection. I mean,
Yes.
certainly 1 week or 2 months did not bring you to this
Mm.
moment. You knew who you were before this happened. I feel like this was an exercise in deepening that
Mhm.
belief. What did you do prior that allowed you to have this introspection about yourself?
I was fascinated by the human mind my whole life. So I think it started when I was a kid and I was exploring everything from an acting perspective, because that was my first career. How people think, how the character thinks, why they present this specific moment. So my journey started there. And then I was so fascinated by it that I wanted to learn it. And I decided to learn psychology and do masters in psychodrama, which is an action-based therapy that helps people reach their subconscious without knowing they're there, by doing, by acting things. And so the subconscious comes to the conscious. And I had patience and I had a great journey with that. And then I decided to move to the US and went through my own personal journey of exploring myself and who I am and who I was and what brought me to the place that I decided to move and leave everything I knew and open a new page. And it was quite a journey, because I also 7 years ago decided to heal myself physically from a chronic knee pain. And so I started doing meditations, healing meditations, and that opened a new world rather than psychology and analyzing who you are in your childhood and your past. Through meditations, you can actually affect your body. And I was like, this is like diamonds. I should explore it more. And so I started exploring all meditation fields and ideas and philosophies. And then I met the philosophy and studied it of Jiddu Krishnamurti. He talks about a different type of meditation, how you can meditate while you're talking, while you're in a conversation with someone, while you're just with yourself, with your eyes open, while driving. And I was fascinated by that even more. So I studied that. And it all starts with our head and thoughts, how we see ourselves, the images we've built on ourselves, the conditioning we have for all those years, our past, our family, our relationships, all that creates who we are as people. And one day I had a revelation. I was like, everything clicked. All the parts, all the puzzles, everything I studied, everything I explored about myself just clicked. Okay, now I can be myself.
What a wonderful journey. I have been fascinated by how the brain works as well, and not to the degree of your studies, but have done my dabbling with research.
Mhm.
So you and I will definitely have to connect after
Please.
the podcast is over.
I'd love
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, me too. This was very inspiring and truly enjoyed it. I have one last question for you. What advice do you have for other leaders as to
Mhm.
when it would be time for them to press pause?
The best advice I can give: listen to your body. Because when your body is in fear or anger, you can feel it. You're starting to sweat, your heartbeats are pounding. That is the moment that your body alerts you of something is going on. And that's a moment to pause. Because if you react from that place, you can, it's one choice. But that means you're recreating the same reactions over and over again. And you're not really pausing and observing it. You're judging the other person, or you're judging yourself, or you're coming from a fear, or coming from an anger that you're frustrated about something. And the results are not always good, because that's not how you want to communicate with people. And that's a moment to pause. And it can be a second of pause. I feel fear, or I feel anger, or that annoys me, or that's frustrating. And then just say, okay, I can be frustrated, but there's a different way I can communicate this. But those pauses are super important for your own health, for your own groundness, for your own centered, and to break cycles you don't want anymore. And so take those moments and just acknowledge that that's what's going on in your head. And then you can choose to react the same or not. It's up to you.
I
um,
love that. So your advice is you can pause anytime you want. It doesn't have to be for a week or a month, or I've had other people pause for much longer. It could
yeah.
be something, I feel it right now, I'm going to pause, and enough time, whether it's seconds or minutes, to break the cycle. I like the terminology there,
Yeah.
to break the cycle, that this is the way I always react, but maybe today I don't. So really wonderful. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I am very excited that you had so much wisdom to impart from your story. And thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. If you're interested in learning more about Elor, go to Lucid Lev on LinkedIn. If you're interested in learning more about me, go to thesalientstrategist.com. And please listen again wherever you listen to your podcasts.